Welcome to Fight News Now. I'm John Pollock. A lot coming your way on today's show. We're going to be taking a look at the upcoming Glory 29 card that is set for Copenhagen, plus a big look at Sunday's main event involving heavyweights Junior Dos Santos and Ben Rothwell, who will collide in Croatia. And then I'll be going over all the news of the day with John Ramdine and Robin Black, including another title fight added to UFC 200 coming up in July. Sit back and check it out. It's Fight News Now coming your way. We're here with John Ramdine and Robin Black, and we're going to start off at UFC 200, happening July the 9th in Las Vegas. We have yet another title fight added to this card, as Miesha Tate is going to be defending the title. That might have not been a big surprise, but against Amanda Nunes may have been. What do you think about this matchmaking strategy that the UFC has gone forward with?
Well, I think one of the reasons why is I wouldn't be surprised if Miesha Tate was involved in these in the conversation of her opponent. I think in the grand scheme of things, if the UFC had their wish, they want Holly Holm to be facing Ronda Rousey for the championship. That is not a possibility because neither of those ladies are the current champion. We don't know when Ronda Rousey is going to make her return to the Ultimate Fighting Championship. I think the UFC is confident that she's going to make her return to the sport sometime in 2016. I wouldn't hold my breath if I was the Zuffa Brass. And then you look at the rematch with Holly Holm. I'm sure the UFC anticipates the rematch between Holly and Ronda to do huge numbers. Why not try to build a star other than Ronda and Holly? You have that with Miesha Tate. Amanda Nunes comes to fight, but this is a fight that Miesha Tate can certainly win. Again, if you're being objective and you look at that last fight with Holly Holm, it wasn't going Miesha's way, but because of her determination, that never die attitude, she found her way and she became the champion because of it. But if you look back at the tape, proof is in the pudding.
Yeah, and when people are trying to figure out how the matchmaking works, and often there's conspiracy theories and all these ideas, I've talked a lot. Joe Silva's a good friend, and I've talked to Sean Shelby. I've dealt with him a lot. There's one key word when they're matchmaking. It's called spreadsheets. Yeah. They literally are just sometimes looking at who's available and how it lays out. Sometimes it is more complicated than that, and I think this is one of those times because Ronda Rousey will fight the champion in November or December. Is that champion going to be Miesha Tate? Or is it going to be Amanda Nunes? Well, whichever one it is, you'll have seen them at UFC 200, and that'll get you ready to see them fight Ronda.
Certainly, I think everyone is curious to hear from Holly Holm's camp in regards to whether this fight was ever on the table and her own reaction to not getting this rematch. I think it's a gamble for the UFC in some regards because I think in a perfect world, you want Miesha Tate defending this title against either Holm in the rematch or another rematch with Rousey. That would seem to be your best bet. If you're Miesha Tate here, I think she's going to be heavily favored in this fight. Amanda Nunes is very tough, but I think if you break down things, Amanda Nunes is someone that once you get her out of the first round, I think this becomes much more advantageous for Tate. And on top of that, she just recently signed a new deal with the UFC, and just her fighting on this UFC 200 card, she's going to make an incredible amount of money that particular night. This is going to be a gigantic show. And for Miesha Tate, probably did not want to wait till later in the year, and of course is going to have that confidence that this is a fight she can win.
Yeah, I think when it comes down to who is available for Miesha Tate, I can't imagine that Holly Holm's name would be a part of that because she wasn't willing to wait for Ronda. She took the fight with Miesha Tate because she wanted to stay active, and I don't think, looking down the road, that Holly Holm would say, okay, sure, if it's going to be Ronda, I'll be ready to fight her sometime towards the end of the year. No, I'm sure that Holly, all you have to do is look back at the press conference. She wanted to fight the next day. She was very disappointed with the way things went. She wanted to jump back on the horse. I would imagine if Holly Holm had been offered this rematch right away at UFC 200, she would have taken it, no problem.
Yeah, let's take a second and figure out what Miesha Tate is. We know she's the bantamweight champion of the world, but what is she when it comes down to fighting? With Ronda Rousey, there was a subspecialty in judo and ripping people's arms off and later punching them really hard. With Holly Holm, you had a former world boxing champion who's great at managing range. With Miesha Tate, what you have is a super well-rounded fighter who can handle any of the Amanda Nuneses of the world, no guarantees, but these are the kind of fights she wins, who has incredible tenacity and incredible drive to win, is very, very tough and very mentally tough. This is a perfect fight for her.
I think that it's going to be a fight that certainly, if you look later in hindsight, I mean, the idea that Amanda Nunes wins this, I think of all the options we have on the table at 135 pounds, probably the least, I guess, business fight of all of them would be Amanda Nunes, Holly Holm. If Miesha Tate wins this fight, though, conversely, and the UFC wins out on this gamble here, I mean, Miesha Tate and Holly Holm, they can headline their own pay-per-view, and suddenly you have another huge card for the fall later this year, potentially. That doesn't even have to be Madison Square Garden. That could be a December show, for instance, and suddenly we have yet another big fight on top of it. And 200, to be honest, in some ways it sells itself when you have Conor McGregor and Nate Diaz. It is 200. It's going to be a stacked card that you didn't need necessarily to have a blockbuster fight for this women's title on top of it.
Yeah, I agree. But at the same time, when you look at Amanda Nunes, you said, one of the things that Miesha Tate can rely on is that her opponent, Amanda Nunes, in this case, gets tired as the fights go on. Well, one of the things you do is you can control all the things that you can control. And for Amanda Nunes, she can control whether or not her conditioning will be on point to be able to handle, an exhaustive 25 minutes. She'll be prepared. This is the huge opportunity that all the ladies have been waiting for. Not just, as soon as the UFC started having women fight, it's like, okay, we want to get to that point. Now they're going to crown a champion. This is perfect for Amanda Nunes. She's going to be dedicated. She's working with a great team, an American top team. So I think she'll be prepared. And if she does manage to defeat Miesha Tate, you have a great story. You have, the championship changed hands, just like back in the light heavyweight days when Lyoto Machida was there and Shogun. It wasn't until John Jones came around that we had a stable champion at 205 pounds, but it created a whole bunch of interest.
Some fighters, it will take them a long time to ever be really, really the same in rounds 3, 4, 5. And it's often the ones, what makes an Amanda Nunes so good, what makes her so dangerous is her ferocity. And what makes it hard for her to manage her energy is no matter what kind of shape she's in, self-control is a big part of that. How much self-control do you want to have when a big part of your game is blasting forward aggressively? Kevin Randleman, there were so many of these in the early days where guys were like, if I pull it back a little bit, I'm not as offensive, I'm not as free, I'm not as dangerous. So I just let it go. If I can't get you done, well, it's going to be tough later in the rounds. I mean, there's still a lot of fighters like that, and I think she's one of them.
And we'll now move on over to the UFC card coming up next weekend in Tampa and everything that's going on with lightweight Khabib Nurmagomedov. Of course, we learned earlier this week, Tony Ferguson off of that card. And then talks began. We thought Donald Cerrone was going to step in. That fell apart for a variety of reasons, with both sides disputing what exactly happened. And in to replace Tony Ferguson now is Daryl Horcher, a 12-1 lightweight coming out of the CFFC organization out of New Jersey. He is their lightweight champion, stepping up on very short notice here. And essentially with Khabib Nurmagomedov, for a guy that has not fought since April of 2014, this is probably not the worst strategy for a guy that has not made any money fighting in 2 years.
Yeah, exactly. And I think what it comes down to is he's not going to be the main event. That's reserved for Rashad and Teixeira. Now it becomes a showcase fight for the Eagle. We know what this guy is capable of. Now, if you can get this audience that hasn't seen him in 2 years, if you can get him throwing Horcher all over the place with these big suplexes and takedowns and tenacity and a ferocious attack, people will go, oh yes, we forgot about this guy. Now he's inserted back into the 155-pound mix. So this isn't the worst thing.
And this is not a risk-free equation for Khabib Nurmagomedov.
Yeah, but it's fighting. Normally it never is.
Nobody has ever beaten Khabib. Yeah. But now we have a different Khabib, a Khabib with a reconstructed knee, a Khabib who's got some of the challenges that come with that, physical and mental and hesitation, any of those things. Daryl Horcher is a very tough guy. My very good friend Alex Ricci went and fought him. I used to manage Alex. He's a close family friend. Alex is super dangerous. His hands are unbelievable. He was training down with Evan Boris at the Blackzilians. Very dangerous guy, fought for that CFFC title. And Daryl Horcher was able to manage that fight, manage the stress, manage the distance, and stay calm and relax and come back and really put the exclamation point on round 3. Can he do that against Khabib? That's a whole different thing. But this is not going to be as shocking experience for Daryl Horcher, who's been waiting for his chance to get into the UFC. Is Khabib going to win this fight? He's going to win this fight 97 times out of 100. But Daryl Horcher is ready to make it night number 1, 2, or 3 out of 100.
And realistically, I know people are going to look at the risk factor here. It's like Khabib cannot guarantee anything. No fight you can guarantee something. I mean, if this this guy slips up against Daryl Horcher, then, I mean, he would have been fighting Tony Ferguson anytime in this same time frame. And coming out of this, you look at the other side, that Khabib comes out of this, looks good. I think that Tony Ferguson fight, that's a fight people do want to see, and you will wait until Tony Ferguson is healthy, and you can put that fight together later this year.
True, but it can be also a step back for the Eagle as well, because if he looks flat, if he looks dull, it's like, oh, we can only imagine how he would have looked against Tony Ferguson, who seems to be, hitting his stride right now, looking really, really good, and you can see him challenging for a championship. So I think this is good in the sense that you have to wait to see the type of performance, because not everybody can look good.
This guy, though, he needs cage time. He needs to just get in there and fight, both from a financial level and just himself. 2 years away, this is not a bad situation for Khabib Nurmagomedov.
Remember when Dominic Cruz needed cage time after all that time off, and he just blasted across the cage, got the double leg and just pounded out? And that's something you might see. Khabib will probably come out super aggressive. Not a bad idea against a guy feeling a little octagon shock, waking up on, Tuesday of 1 week going, everything's cool. And then all of a sudden on Saturday night of the following week, there's a guy who's undefeated in almost 20 fights who's coming at you. That's not a bad way to get real aggressive real early.
So there you go. Khabib Nurmagomedov will be fighting April 16th in Tampa, and we are going to be back Sunday morning, 11 a.m. Eastern Time, getting you set for the UFC's debut in Croatia, which is headlined by Ben Rothwell and Junior Dos Santos. We will chat with you Sunday.